Imagine growing up in a household where every penny is counted, where your father works 2 jobs to pay the bills, and your mother does whatever she can to keep the house running. Sounds like the reality of many Brazilian families, doesn't it? But it's not just that. It's also the story of Chris Rock, the character from Everybody Hates Chris, a black boy from a hardworking family growing up in the United States in the 1980s. And it's no wonder the show was a massive hit in Brazil. Want to know why? Because, even though it's set in another country, it reflects the reality of millions of Brazilians, and I'm not exaggerating. But hold on, I'm not saying that Brazil is a land of misery and suffering. Not at all. On the contrary, it's a country full of wealth, diversity, and opportunities. The problem is that social inequality in the country is huge. We have extremely wealthy people living in luxury, while others struggle day after day just to put food on the table. And you know what's most ironic? This disparity is exactly what makes Everybody Hates Chris resonate so deeply with the Brazilian audience. Think about it. Chris' dad, Julius, has 2 jobs. He works like crazy, and every time he says, "That costs about 64 cents." You can picture a Brazilian dad saying the exact same thing, right? In Brazil, having 2 jobs isn't something exclusive to Julius. How many fathers wake up at dawn to catch the first bus, make the new round trip for another exhausting day of work, and still come home with enough energy to take care of the family? And I'm not exaggerating, this is the reality for millions of families. The National Household Sample Survey shows that over 40% of the Brazilian population relies on some form of informal work or underemployment to survive. In other words, there are millions of Juliuses in Brazil doing the impossible just to cover the basics. We're not talking about extreme poverty here, but about people living with the bare minimum, fighting every day to have a dignified life. This is one of the reasons why the show resonated so strongly in Brazil. In fact, several of the actors from the show are idols in Brazil, like Terry Crews, Takaina Arnold, and Vincent Martella.
Brazil!
Really? What's the story there?
I started getting a lot of tweets and on my social media, and then my Instagram account in Portuguese. I'm like, what in the world? Like, what's going on?
Right.
I'm like, what happened? Like, did I do something when I went to Brazil? But they told me that I was one of the only positive black female dark-skinned images on in Brazil, because there's one there. Yeah, which is great.
Olha, se todo mundo odeia o Chris, todo mundo ama esse cara aqui no Brasil, Diguinho.
Vincent Martella!
Martella made a huge impact when he wore a shirt that said, "I'm famous in Brazil." That moment skyrocketed his Instagram following from 200,000 to over 5 million. On the other hand, Tyler has shown that he doesn't really like the Brazilian audience, making this clear on several occasions. As a result, Brazil, which once adored him, now completely disregards him. After that, Brazilians even launched a campaign for Vincent to surpass Tyler in the number of followers, and they managed to hit the goal in less than 3 days. Chris was the only black boy in a predominantly white school. In Brazil, racial segregation like that in America doesn't exist in the same way, but you know what does exist? Social segregation. Public schools in many regions reflect the socioeconomic conditions of Brazilian families. While private schools offer quality education with well-paid teachers and top-notch facilities, public schools often lack resources. But those attending public schools have no choice. Like Chris, many Brazilians face bullying, prejudice, and even lack of support from those who should be there to help them. However, what's most curious is that, even with all these challenges, these children and young people find strength in resilience. They don't give up. And that's why Chris's scenes in public school resonate so deeply here. Most Brazilians grew up facing similar issues: lack of materials, unmotivated teachers, and, of course, the feeling of having to push forward with what they have. Another point that makes Everybody Hates Chris fit into Brazilian reality is the size of families. In the show, the Rock family has 3 children, which is already considered large by American standards. In Brazil, it's common to see families with 3, 4, or more children. However, unlike wealthier countries where the cost of living is generally more manageable in relation to income, here, every additional child adds to the financial burden. Each child means more expenses for food, school, clothes, and bills keep piling up. It's the same dilemma faced by Julius and Rochelle in the series. But here's an interesting point. The show, just like the lives of many Brazilian families, isn't solely about financial difficulties. It's about unity. Despite all the challenges, families in Brazil and Chris's family have something in common: unwavering love. The fights, the stress, the jokes, all of this is part of everyday life. But at the end of the day, what keeps these families together is love and the desire to provide a better future for their children. Now, if the show were set in Brazil, the story would be a bit different, but Chris's challenges would still feel familiar. In Brazil, we see something very peculiar: the coexistence of extreme wealth and extreme poverty. According to data from FGV, the richest 5% in Brazil earn 24 times more than the poorest 50%. We're talking about a nation with over 2 million millionaires, but at the same time, almost 50 million Brazilians live on less than $85 a month. That's the real issue. Brazil isn't a poor country. In fact, it's the 9th largest economy in the world. Instead, it's a country with a terrible income distribution. And that's why everybody hates Chris was so successful in the country. The inequality Chris faces in the United States is also experienced in Brazil. Julius even saves on laundry detergent, Rochelle works from home and takes care of the kids, and Chris tries to be the good son, even when everything is against him. Any Brazilian family can relate to that. It's not about being miserable, it's about making the most of what you have. Another strong similarity between the show and Brazil is the desire to climb the social ladder. In several scenes, Chris wants to improve his life. He dreams of being successful and making his parents proud. This is very Brazilian. Brazilians have the spirit of making it happen, whether it's selling something to supplement their income or studying in a public school while dreaming of passing a civil service exam. Brazil is a land of opportunities, but it's also a land of challenges. Often, people have to fight much harder than they should to achieve a minimum level of comfort. And there's nothing wrong with having big dreams. The problem is that in a country with such inequality, those in lower classes need to put in significantly more effort to obtain what seems easy for others. Despite the country having many qualities, such as sunshine all year round, beautiful beaches, large metropolises, plenty of quality food, and a wide variety of fruits, there's still a lot to be resolved. What is the biggest difference between Everybody Hates Chris and life in Brazil? Perhaps it's hope. In the series, Chris faces various challenges, but in the end, there's always that touch of humor, the feeling that, deep down, everything will be alright. In real life, it's not always like that. A happy ending isn't guaranteed. But if there's something that Brazilians and Chris have in common, it's the ability to laugh in the face of difficulties and keep moving forward, even when the situation seems tough. And maybe that's why Brazilians love this series so much. It makes people laugh at our own pains and reminds us that, even amid so many difficulties, there's still room for love, humor, and dreams. Because, deep down, everybody hates Chris, but everyone is rooting for him to succeed. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. In the first pinned comment, you'll find 2 more videos that will surely interest you. Until the next video.